Our next speaker today also contributed work to the journal under the Listening In feature. Dr. Sarah Town is a music and dance scholar whose research explores the histories, aesthetics, and circulation of Afro-Latinx popular dance cultures, highlighting the role of these forms in building and expressing local and global communities. Her book project is entitled Buscando la Gozadera, Timba Culture in Global Markets, and her additional works appear in the journals Ethnomusicology and Studies in Spanish and Latin American Cinema. And she has also produced a digital lecture on gender in transnational Cuban social dance, which was sponsored by the Society for American Music and is available on YouTube. She currently serves as a postdoctoral lecturing fellow in Duke University's Thompson's Writing Program, where she teaches courses on popular dance cultures and dialogue and improvisation in popular performance practices. Alongside her scholarship, Dr. Town teaches and performs Cuban popular music and social dance, as well as Brazilian capoeira.
If I met you for the first time after March 15th, 2020, I may never have seen the lower half of your face. I may have no real sense of your actual size. Probably in my mental image, your voice sounds muffled or lacks depth. Whether we met in person or online, it's likely that I don't know how you smell, and that I've missed countless other nonverbal or non-visual cues as to your sensibilities and generally what makes you, you. This unprecedented and widespread adoption of masks, social distancing practices, and digital interactions in place of fully face-to-face and flesh-to-flesh embodied interactions has important implications for our relationships with one another as humans, and as ethnographers, our relationship to those, our research into those relationships, and the kinds of meaning and belonging they explore and produce. Yeah, do your thing. At the same time, these practices in themselves are not new. My contribution to Borders, Boundaries, Fronteras is about translocal networks of musicians, dancers, and DJs who produce, consume, and promote what I call Cuban popular dance culture, particularly the music called timba and the social dance called casino. Despite the mobility and border crossings, whether national, ethnic, racial, class, gender, or other, of individuals' sounds and movement styles within that context, often through a reliance on technology, Cuban popular dance culture is very much a set of signs and practices that centers a sense of community and shared space built around embodied encounters. In my article, I outline some of the ways in which pre-existing networks and communities have adapted to the mandates of social distancing. I explore what that means for the participants in these communities, for the present and future of popular music and social dance of Cuban origins, and for our society's relationship to the arts more broadly. As a short listening in feature, my piece provides just a brief window into this phenomenon. Nonetheless, it attempts to raise several bigger questions, any of which I'd love to discuss with you here today. I begin the article with a survey of some of the new creations produced in response to the global pandemic, including songs and choreographies that explicitly reference and attempt to make sense of it, and online events and series in which artists helped promote social distancing. These include already existing classes and events that moved online, often blossoming to embrace new modalities and formats, and teachers, musicians, and community leaders who took to Facebook Live and other platforms to spontaneously offer often free charlas related to cultural themes. Most all of these offerings related to existing grassroots translocal networks. In other words, artists reached out to people they had connected with in person or on social media in the past in order to involve them in new performances, classes, and other initiatives. Though they also reached new audience members and students, existing networks were essential to the circulation of their events, information, and materials. Further, through those new online interactions, they also fostered these existing networks during a period when normal modes of travel and face-to-face interaction weren't possible. So here are a few examples. Early on in the quarantine, Cuban-born and trained dancer based in Israel, Nano Manuel Echevarria Ulloa, posted to Facebook a dance challenge that he called the Corona Dance. He set the choreography to a recent release by Cuban artist Michael Blanco, the song entitled Ya Tu No Coronas, and he filmed it on his patio. The song's lyrics scold a pretender, letting him know he's not the one in charge. The woman he thinks is his learned everything she knows in the ways of love from the singer. The original lyrics already contain a creative use of the word coronar, which is literally means to crown. Echevarria activates a further play on words, now suggesting, no te corones, don't get sick, don't get the coronavirus. The choreography combines steps from the Afro-Cuban deity Chango and others with popular salsa suelta styling. So he brings this movement of Chango, and then this, which I associate with timba, sort of salsa suelta choreographies. In the chorus, the dancer pitches, this is pre-mask, really kind of interesting kind of artifact, pitches their nose and dances backwards, shaking their finger, and then they're shooing, saying no, and away, corona, away, corona. So this is one of the first coronavirus-era dance challenges to circulate in the Cuban social dance community, and the first one that I noticed that specifically referenced the pandemic back in March 2020. Soon, other musicians and dancers began to release new work exploring the pandemic and related themes. Among these, Alexandra Abreu and Ivana de Primera's Quiero verte otra vez, I want to see you again, had particular resonance. In its verses, the singer promises to fill the listener with hugs when they meet again, and in the chorus, he implores, stay at home and let the world take a breath. Also in 2020, Ivana de Primera collaborated with contemporary rumba group Osain del Monte on another important single entitled Raza, in which they offered a poignant response to historic and present-day racism and racist violence in the US, Cuba, and beyond. It's like a long day with no food. So I'm going to show you some lyrics, and I'm going to take them away because you need to use another screen to play the song. I want to let you know that the lyrics contain references to images from the time of slavery and scientific racism, so that you're prepared for that. So these are just excerpts from the song, which I will play for you in a second. It starts out with rhythm from Palo Monte, then it moves into rumba, and then the chorus is a regular salsa, Cuban salsa. So now I'm gonna see if this, oops, oh, that worked, okay. So I'm gonna have to stop share, and I'm gonna share the screen again. And we'll just listen to sections of each of those.
Perro mayora, suelta perro mayora, cuida con ese marrón, con su ganga güey, arriba el toto. Suelta perro mayora, suelta perro mayora, cuida con ese marrón, con su ganga güey, arriba el toto. Suelta perro mayora, suelta perro mayora, cuida con ese marrón, con su ganga güey, arriba el toto. Quiero escuchar tu corazón, a ver si late igual que el mío. Déjame entrar en tus venas, a ver si tu sangre es roja. Muéstrame tu piel desnuda, a ver si reacciona el frío. Y si eres diferente, quizás te pueda entender.
And I'm going to skip to the chorus. Just the very end of
Bueno, Millares, ya llenaste mi vida de muerte, ya rompiste mi alma en pedazos, ahora llena de flores tus brazos, y al menos déjame quererte. Sí, vamos, mírame a los ojos y ponle fin al sufrimiento y al dolor. Que somos una sola raza, con diferente color. Agüe son agüe, mañana son mañana. Ya rompiste mi alma en pedazos, ahora llena de flores tus brazos. Y al menos déjame que vivo soñando, vivo pensando.
So, as the final example of these new creations, I want to highlight the online classes and events organized by Katy Hernandez, one of my main mentors and dance teachers in Afro-Cuban and Cuban social dance. Born and raised and trained in Cuba and currently based in Los Angeles, Katy is a well-known performer and teacher in the US Cuban social dance scene. She teaches and performs regularly in LA and travels frequently to bigger events hosted in different cities, so she has students all over the US and further afield as well. In April 2020, in the midst of deep uncertainty about what was safe to do and when things might go back to any kind of normal, she took her regular weekly classes online and expanded her offerings with a schedule that accommodated students based on the East and West coasts. Several weeknights she offered Afro-Cuban classes at various levels. Saturdays she taught feminine styling for Cuban salsa. I don't know what I look like. She also began hosting open conversations with musicians based around the US on music history and musicality for dancers. Sundays, Katy taught her signature Orisha therapy class, 2 hours of dance dedicated to Afro-Cuban deities, often followed by lengthy hangs on Zoom with her national student base. Despite my intense desire during this time not to look at a computer screen any more than necessary, and especially not on the weekends, these are the classes that I attended most frequently. I love Katy's Orisha therapy classes, and especially early in the pandemic, I saw this opportunity to dance with her regularly as an unexpected boon in the midst of crisis. Also, I needed my Orisha therapy. Eventually, my participation tapered off. Sometimes the Zoom lag was just intensely frustrating, and with so much of our lives already trapped online, I needed to get my son and myself off the internet and outside as much as possible. But I do want to give you a sense of what Afro-Cuban dance classes look like on Zoom. And so Katy would create these promotional quick video clips, and you get a couple of glimpses of a Zoom class, a Zoom Afro-Cuban class. So let me play this for you. There's no sound. Oh, I have the sound off, that's why. But you can it's okay. There might not even be sound on the video. The main thing is for you to see I think that was the end of it. So in the beginning is where you see the little boxes of people dancing in their skirts. Though commercially released songs and online classes were typically monetized from the beginning, especially in the early days of the pandemic, other artistic content available via social media channels was offered for free and without compensation to the artists involved. A Facebook Live post might include a link to a virtual tip jar courtesy of Venmo or PayPal, but that was about the extent of it. This flourishing of online music and dance was heartwarming and inspiring. It encouraged us to stay home and helped us connect with others at a time when we as a society needed both of these things as never before in our lifetimes. Yet, at least in the US, it also raised critical questions about our nation's relationship with the arts. Within the context of my research, those who were most active in posting were working artists who in normal times worked 7 days a week, often with multiple gigs a day, in order to provide for their households, and who were suddenly without work. When private and public events began to crop up again, working artists were among those who put their bodies at risk. They weren't delivering critical health care or food services, but they worked to keep our collective spirit alive and also to feed and house their families. As a result of this, several artists I know contracted COVID at least once. As I experienced all of this, I was struck by the extent to which access to technology has changed since I started traveling to Cuba for music and dance in 2000 and conducting academic research there in 2014. For example, in Cuba in 2015, it was a privilege to have a dial-up internet connection at home. I remember that one of the casas particulares, privately run B&Bs, that I stayed at during March of that year had a connection like that. And one time I tried to check my Yahoo email account from their computer with their dial-up connection. For an exasperating hour, I just tried repeatedly, and the home screen of my inbox just wouldn't even load because it contained too much data for like I would have had to change the data settings before, like the formatting settings before I got there. It would almost load and then the connection would drop and then we'd dial up and start again. And it was crazy and eventually I gave up. But by summer 2015, Wi-Fi began to be available in public parks and spaces. And there's an excellent video that I love to this day that I want to show you, commemorating that moment. I'll just watch about a minute of it.
Ya tenemos internet, hoy por todo 23, hago PD celular, ya tú puedes navegar. ¡Qué locura! ¿Quién lo iba a decir? Ya estamos navegando. Nosotros los cubanos que tenemos siempre un navegante en el alma. Lo hemos tenido toda la vida. Y ahora, no por el mar, ni por los ríos, ni por las presas, sino en la red de redes. 40 megabytes conectado estoy por Wi-Fi, 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 Wi-Fi. Si se acaban las tarjetas.
I have to stop it because I want to keep moving. But I'm gonna move back. I don't know if I have anything else to show on the other thing yet, so I'll wait and see. So by 2020, Wi-Fi access was available in hotels, city parks, and public spaces throughout Havana and around the country via codes purchased with convertible currency, the one tied to the US dollar. The Cuban telecommunications company had rolled out plans for cellular customers. Blocked apps and technical issues aside, by 2020, Cubans on the island with access to Wi-Fi were active on Facebook, Instagram, and various messaging apps, among other platforms. Nonetheless, when I saw online streaming concerts, I'll just click to this last image so you can see online streaming concerts being offered by artists and organizations based in Cuba, such as Tunturuntu Pa Tu Casa, which hosted weekly concerts and then branched out into cooking classes and all kinds of stuff. And here's Daramir Gonzalez from New York City. So they really involved, and this is, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. Simafunk, right. So, you know, celebrities, like the international Cuban communities involved here. I was a little skeptical. Most Cubans that I know don't have that kind of access to Wi-Fi and data. They wouldn't use it to watch a live streaming concert with so many other cultural offerings available through other means to them. Probably there is a segment of the population who would, but the people that I know, like, wouldn't spend their money on that. They just don't have that much. In that sense, much of the content that began emanating from the island in that format with the onset of the pandemic seemed to be aimed at the global community of expats, friends, and lovers of Cuban culture, and not so much at local audiences. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much done with this thing, and I'm gonna share my other one again, which is just gonna be blank for a while. Like many other music and dance scholars, conducting research and maintaining ongoing relationships with communities of practice during the past year and a half, and also going back to my opening thoughts, just plain old people living in these times, I found myself reflecting frequently on the role of communication technologies in our lives before, during, and after COVID. The kinds of things they have made possible in different contexts, and how we and they mutually have reshaped ourselves in the context of the pandemic. Particularly, I thought a lot about what it means to be a social dancer and to research popular music and social dance online. How do you do that? How do you dance with someone on Zoom? How does it make you feel? And does it count as something like a dance or an interaction? Or are you and those you dance with acting like your own avatars? projecting past experiences and future fantasies onto a two-dimensional, tiny image of a person dancing on your screen, rather than sharing a new experience in the present, or some combination or something else. As Fernando Ortiz has it, Cubania is full, felt, conscious, and desired Cubanness, responsible Cubanness, Cubanness with the three virtues of faith, hope, and love. I think what Ortiz's definition allows us to do is move beyond nationalist essentialisms and ideologies and recognize the importance of cultural solidarity in inspiring the practices and weaving the networks with which we shape our world. Because of the small size of local scenes dedicated to performing and promoting Cuban popular music and social dance, even before COVID, the global Cubania community already maintained a strong online presence, which helped to foster the translocal and international networks essential to maintaining its viability and vibrancy. Especially during the height of pandemic-related lockdowns, this presence expanded, not simply in a hunt for new hobbies or distractions from the boredom of being stuck at home, but to enact and strengthen a worldwide community of real people who knew each other, or at least knew of each other, and celebrate a shared passion for Cuban popular dance culture. A curiosity about the interplay among these continuities and ruptures, normals and new normals, is what underlies my contribution, Mi Casa es Su Casa, Cubania in Cyberspace. And I'll just fast forward to my thank you slide. Thank you. Any questions?
I was wondering, did you notice in the move online that some genres like succeeded or gained popularity and others kind of fell by the wayside, or certain styles?
Genres of music or dance or anything?
I looked at like shakuhachi music, and like solo playing really took off in the online space, but being able to play with other people is not very conducive when you're online. So I don't know. You talked a little bit about like what does it mean to dance with somebody online? So.
Yeah, so there, and I showed you that example of Kati's class. So we were dancing together, and you could sort of set. I mean, part of what happens is, right, everyone has their own setup in their house. Some people are dancing with their cell phone, and they're probably just watching Kati. Other people are dancing with a laptop. That was me, watching, you know, a few people on my screen with Kati's video pinned. Other people invested in big setups, so like they could, you know, feed the meeting into a screen and watch Kati larger than life, like in their living room, right, dancing with her. So there's that. But the music was always out of sync. So that's what I talked about, like when you're dancing Shango. This is how it's supposed to end. Like, this is a very strong movement right here, and it would always be off. Like when you watched Kati, it wouldn't match up with the sound, and it was like really frustrating. There's also social dance, right, or sort of like partner dancing, rueda de casino, which is kind of the quintessential Cuban salsa that you see and recognize as very distinctive from linear salsa. And people held rueda de casino events online, and people would, you know, some people had their dance partner or their, you know, life partner with them, and they would dance together in their spaces. Other people would just dance alone in their space. The Rueda de la Calle community from Washington, D.C. held these pretty regularly for a while. I don't remember when they stopped happening, but they had a DJ piping in the sound. They would have a caller from a different location, like a different Zoom window, and then everyone else would be muted. And so the caller would, so there's already lag, right, but minimal lag in the Zoom land. So the caller would call, you know, enchufla, and so I would do my enchufla by myself, or if I was leading, my invisible partner would do my enchufla by myself. And other partners would do it together. I think a lot of people just went to those events to foster the community, not to really experience the dancing, but to sort of their faces would be close up to the windows. They would be typing in the chat with somebody. Sometimes people would pin each other's videos in order to dance together. So like, you know, I'm here dancing. I'm not going to follow the caller. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I never did this. I just watched other people do it. But they were sort of interacting with each other with their videos pinned. So there was a little bit of a focus on dancing with somebody. So those are social dance genres. I think the musicians, a lot of the musicians that I follow most are in New York or they're in Cuba. Cuban musicians were in the studio being super productive, as what I saw, or getting together to play like on the Tunturuntu series, like getting together in someone's home, someone's private space. And the New Yorkers were just playing outside, like they played outside pretty much all year last year, like even into really cold weather. And the social dancers in the New York scene would come out too, so they sort of just bucked, refused to be completely socially isolated, and that's how the different genres and kind of continued. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Derek Kane, and he says, with the forced solo dancing associated with the pandemic, did you see changes in traditional gender roles for social dances?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Thank you. How do I answer that? I mean, I would say there's definitely like a lot going on with gender roles and dancing. I have a video about women leaders in Cuban salsa. So I think that actually maybe happens at least as much, or if not more, when people are dancing together in social settings. There's women who take on the lead role, which is typically the male role, and may take on some of the male styling along with that. In rumba, for example, Colombia is usually associated with masculinity, masculine gestures, but women have been doing a lot of Colombia in workshops and private lessons for some time now in the Cuban social dance scene. So I would say that I didn't see that the pandemic really affected those trends that were already kind of in motion. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Then thank you so much.